Hello there, welcome to my channel. My name is Kristen, and here I like to talk about social and cultural stuff, usually through the lens of pop culture, public figures, popular media, but not always. Today's subject is going to be Demi Lovato and their journey of discovery about themselves, as well as their struggles with, certain issues that we will get into. So if that sounds interesting to you, I hope you will stick around, get comfortable, get a snack, and let's just go through kind of the story of their life from like 2018-ish to present. I post videos every Wednesday, so if you would like to see more from me, please subscribe, do the bell icon thingy. Feel free to engage if you want to tell the algorithm that you like this kind of stuff. And yeah, let's get into it. So we're going to start the chapter of Demi's story that I'm going to be trying to talk about today on the 6-year anniversary of their sobriety on March 15th, 2018. They were mid-tour, and I believe they were actually on stage when somebody announced that today was their 6-year sobriety anniversary, and they tweeted in celebration as well. And this, at the time from the outside to a lot of us, looked like a high point in their life. 6 years sober is pretty good. And so things, on the outside to us looking in, probably looked like they were going pretty well for Demi. But on the inside, if you looked just below the surface, things were not going super well. And we'll get into that. But before I do, let me just give a little bit of background on Demi Lovato. They were the breakout star of 2008's Camp Rock. It was a Disney movie. They were in that film with the Jonas Brothers, and this was the start of a long career in music and film. They've done something like 10 different films, in the forms of like concert films and TV films and documentaries, and they've released 7 albums so far in their life. So Demi was a child star, and like many child stars, they are treated like money-making machines. Demi was supporting their family, as well as the livelihood of their management team, right? Because Demi's income is what was used to pay all of those people. So Demi was, in many ways, many people's source of income, and that comes with a lot of pressure, especially when you are someone who is sober and has struggled with certain issues. It puts you under a lot of pressure. Their 6-year anniversary of sobriety fell during their Tell Me You Love Me World Tour during the North American leg. It was after the 10th concert in the tour, with 10 more shows to be scheduled after that in the North American leg of the tour alone. After that were 35 more scheduled shows. Actually, I think there were even more than that, but some of them got canceled due to production issues. So the schedule was pretty grueling. I looked at the online, you can see the dates of all the concerts, and they would do like a concert night after night after night, and then they would have a day or two off, and then there would be more concerts back to back. And it looked like there was basically only time in between concerts for traveling. If they could feasibly do concerts, day after day, they would. And so that was grueling, and they were performing almost nightly. And if not performing, they were probably rehearsing. And it was a very stressful time. And Demi talks about, at that time, feeling like they had no control over anything, feeling like everything was decided for them, and like they weren't really making any of their own choices. And this came down to even what they ate, to the point that Demi has shared that when they stayed in a hotel, their phone would be taken away at night so that they could not order room service. They would remove any food from the room, even like fruits, because fruits had sugar. They were given watermelon cakes instead of real cakes for their birthday. Really, really extreme levels of control around their diet and exercise were exerted by the management team. I think in an effort to manage their ED, they developed an ED when they were 9 years old on the beauty pageant circuit due to just extreme pressure to perform well that they put themselves under. And so I think in some ways the management team's control of their diet and exercise routine was an attempt to help keep Demi from relapsing into their ED. But the problem was, like, when you take away someone's control, that actually can trigger the issues again.
I lived a life for the past 6 years that I felt like wasn't my own, because I struggled really hard with and that was my primary problem, and then it turned into other things, but my life, I just felt it was so, and I hate to use this word, but I felt like it was controlled by so many people around me that if I was in my hotel room at night, they would take the phone out of the hotel room so I couldn't call room service. Or if there was fruit in my room, they took it out because that's extra sugar. Like, we're not talking about like brownies and cookies and candies and stuff like that. It's like, it was fruit, you know, and for many years I didn't even have a birthday cake. Like, I had a watermelon cake where you cut your watermelon into the shape of a cake and then you put fat-free whipped cream on top and that was your cake. And so for years I did that, and it kind of became like this ongoing joke, but I just really wanted birthday cake. You know, I think at some point it becomes dangerous to try to control someone's food when they're in recovery.
And so this was the point that they were in. They were just feeling highly controlled. They were feeling very stressed out. The tour was taking a lot out of them. And they, one day they were doing a photo shoot and just thinking to themselves, like, I am more miserable now than I was before I got sober. So why am I sober? And that kind of thought put a seed in their mind that maybe sobriety is not for them. So sometime between the North American leg of the tour and the European leg of the tour, so in April or May of 2018, Demi brought up to their team that they don't think abstinence, sobriety was working for them anymore, and they wanted to try certain things like alcohol and maybe like, a little bit of like bud or something like that. And so the team did not like this. They told them that they were being very selfish, and the team told them that, you're gonna like mess all of our careers up, not just your own, if you make the decision not to be sober. And they left Demi that night. I don't mean like left. I just mean like after the conversation was over and they left, Demi was alone, and they texted someone who they knew had connections and could get them substances. And they went to a party with that person. And at that party, they did something they had not tried before. They have revealed that they were interested in uppers and downers in the past. And previously they had been doing coke and bars, like pills. But now this guy could not get them that. So they offered them instead H. And I'm trying to think of like a YouTube friendly word for this one. It starts with an M and it rhymes with Beth. And so that's what they were using now. A little bit of, in terms of extreme, it seems like a little bit more extreme than their previous usage, just from an outside perspective. So at this point, though, they were not open about the fact that they were using these substances. They just told their team and friends that they were drinking and smoking. The team believed Demi. During this month between the North American tour and the European tour, Demi had access to these substances that I mentioned, and they were using, but still telling other people that they were just drinking and smoking. And it was apparently on a trip to Bali that it started to hit Demi that things were not going super well, and they wrote the song Sober, which you might be familiar with. Demi's Tell Me You Love Me World Tour resumed in May of 2018, the European leg of the tour, and so back on tour, Demi could not access the same substances that they were using during the break, so they just went back to just alcohol. But they were partying pretty hard on the tour after the tour resumed in May of 2018 for the European leg. And during this time, they recorded the song Sober. They released their song Sober on June 21st, 2018, and this was kind of announcing to the world that they were off the wagon. And I feel like this was an example of something that Demi has demonstrated previously many times, which is that they are willing to be very transparent in a vulnerable and bold way.
We're not going to get role models by watching people not make mistakes. We're going to meet and learn from our role models who have overcome their deepest, darkest struggles. We wanted to tell the world, hey, this is what happened, this is how I got through it, and hopefully this can help you too.
Demi came public with the fact that they were not sober anymore, and I think that was really brave of them, and it's just an example of stuff they've been doing. They had been very open about their ED in the past. They were open about their struggles with substance use in the past as well. And so releasing Sober and telling people they were off the wagon was just another example of Demi being radically vulnerable and open, which I think is really admirable. I think that being willing to be open like that gives people realistic role models and tells them they're not alone. And I think it's really important, the openness that Demi is willing to adopt. So after releasing Sober and announcing they were off the wagon, they continued to be off the wagon. Things escalated, and after the European leg of the tour closed, they came back for a show in North America, where again, they had access to substances. And so it was here at this time that they got back into H and, Beth with an M. And at this point, could probably be considered Demi's lowest point. They wrote the song Anyone, which would be released later. And if you've heard it, it's a very emotional and raw song. And then they recorded the song. And this song is really a cry for help. They talk about how they feel like, their usual coping mechanisms of like music and creativity aren't working anymore, and they feel like they need anyone to help them. And even though at the time, like it maybe in retrospect should have been clear that it was a cry for help, Demi looks back and says at the time they didn't realize how not okay they were and how much they needed help, and they felt like they were fine. And so it's just, it's interesting that sometimes you can write a song like, it's like in Rick and Morty when he's singing that song like, I'm begging for help, I'm screaming for help, this is not a dance. Talking about how he needs help, he's trapped in like a body. I feel like that's what happened. It was like a very obvious cry for help, and people just didn't necessarily know. 4 days after recording the song Anyone, there was a birthday party with some friends, and it wasn't Demi's birthday, it was a friend's birthday, and they had a good night. They went back to Demi's house after like going out, and Demi gave everybody LaCroix, and they just hung out and chilled. Demi sent everybody, everybody ended up going home, and Demi told everyone they were going to bed, but they did not go to bed. They had texted their dealer to come over, and their dealer brought substances. This time, it seems like what they brought was laced with something else, because Demi, overdosed. And so the next morning, Demi's assistant at the time found them. They had been coming to wake Demi up for like a doctor's appointment or something. And, Demi was unconscious. And they were even blue, according to what some of the management team said. So the assistant calls for help. They don't call 911 right away, which, in retrospect, that was a mistake. I would say you should always call for an ambulance right away, because every minute counts really. But they called for help, and then they did call for an ambulance soon after calling, for like other people to come help. And so Demi was rushed to the hospital, where they were able to save Demi's life. It was really serious. Demi had 3 strokes and a heart attack and permanent brain damage. And at the hospital, they could tell based on, certain things that Demi had been intimate with somebody. And they asked Demi, did you have consensual relations with someone? And Demi kind of vaguely remembered something. And so they said yes. But looking back later, they were like, I was in no position to do that. I was taken advantage of, which is just really awful. That's just like another layer of the trauma. And so, in the hospital, everyone obviously knows, the ambulance came to their house. And so everybody's talking about the overdose. And the person whose birthday party Demi had been at was receiving all the blame. People were accusing them of being the one who provided, the substances. And they, this is a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's important to say, like, this woman, like, her career was just, like, destroyed, basically. Like, she was a choreographer, and so she did, like, dance classes and stuff. Like, people didn't want their kids to come to her dance classes. Her other clients didn't want to work with her because it was too much drama. She was being trailed by paparazzi, so, like, anytime she tried to go somewhere for her work, she'd be bringing these paparazzi with her. And she said it was, like, the worst thing that she ever went through, the hardest thing she ever had to deal with. And so I just kind of want to bring that up just because I feel like people don't realize how much, like, it wasn't just Demi who was hurt by, all of this stuff. And I'm not saying it was Demi's fault. I'm just saying, like, it's hard. Addiction and ED, they are very, very hard. And it can have ripple effects on other people, especially when you bring in like celebrity and sexism, But anyway, so Demi wakes up in the hospital and they cannot see. The brain damage they experienced was in the eye region of the brain, the vision center, if you will. And so their sister was at their bedside and, said, Demi, I'm with you, I'm here. And Demi says, like, who is that? Who are you? Where they couldn't recognize them. And if they didn't know if their vision would come back. It did for the most part. They do have some blind spots, but they can see again, which is good. That's good. But it was really, really serious. And there was, for the first day or two in the hospital, they didn't know if Demi would survive because of how serious this overdose was. And that's why I, said back earlier in the story that I think it was a mistake not to call 911 sooner. The doctors told Demi that they had 10 minutes to live, probably. If they had been even 10 minutes later, they wouldn't have made it. So it just makes me think if they had called 911 2 minutes sooner, 3 minutes sooner, how much more recovered would Demi have been able to be? But, it's not the assistant's fault by any means, because other people could have called 911 once the assistant told them what was going on, right? So it's not just their responsibility. But anyway, I apologize if you're hearing a weird buzzing. It sounds like someone's using a power tool outside. In the hospital while Demi was recovering, they were able to listen to the song Anyone, which they had recorded a few days prior to the overdose. And while listening to that song, they were just thinking, they said in an interview that they were thinking about the future and how if they get back into music, which they love music, so that was something they probably did want to get back into, they would want to perform the song Anyone. And they were just, kind of holding on to that hope that they would be able to perform their song in the future. And they would. Spoilers. Although I don't think real life has spoilers, So Demi went through, recovery in the hospital and then to an inpatient rehab facility. And they worked really hard on their recovery and on, getting back to a level of sobriety. That's not to say they did not relapse at any point in time. They have said that they did relapse at least once after the overdose. But for the most part, they have been off of those substances that put them in the hospital. So after, going through recovery and having time to really focus on themselves, Demi started to realize that a big part of the problem was this lack of control and this lack of agency and feeling like they weren't able to make their own choices and be true to themselves. And so they decided to take back their control. And so they sought out a new management team. So on May 11th, 2019, they signed with a new manager, Scooter Braun. They seem very happy to be with Scooter, and Scooter seems to be treating them very well. I know that he is not Taylor Swift's favorite person in the world. I know that they had something go down between them, but it does seem like he's being good to Demi, and so I like that. Then the year 2020 happened. We all know what happened in 2020. And so Demi got a lot more time to themselves during this time. They got more time to themselves during this time. They were able to reflect and just really introspect about their identity and who they are and who they want to be in the future. And they also, at this point, they had taken back control of their life and gotten, with a new team, and they were working on new music. And they also felt like they were ready to tell their story and kind of set the record straight. Because I think prior to this, they hadn't really been able to have control over what people believed about what happened and how they ended up in the hospital. And so they started doing that documentary, Dancing with the Devil. Oh, it's on YouTube. You can go watch it. It's good. I watched it. I recommend it. And 2020 obviously complicated the filming of this documentary, but they were able to get it done. And so again, Demi continues to use their voice to shed light on something that's really stigmatized and hard for people to talk about. And I imagine that it meant a lot to people who either know someone who struggles with addiction or people who do struggle with addiction, just to see that, this story of somebody who has been through it and has come out the other side, and they've made mistakes and they continue to grow. I think it's something that people need to see, not necessarily from Demi, but from someone. Everybody needs to see a success story they can look to. So I think it's really important and special that Demi's willing to be so open and vulnerable about this, because not everyone is suited for that. Not everyone can do it. So the people who can, I think it's really great that they do. So, things have continued to go well for Demi. I think it was before they released the documentary, but I think after the filming of it, Demi performed, during the filming of it, Demi performed at the Grammys, and they performed to Anyone, and it was a very moving experience. I cried when I watched them singing, I'm not gonna lie. So, viewers beware if you decide to go look that up, but it was powerful. They also performed at the Super Bowl. They had real birthday cake instead of watermelon cake, which I think was a really big deal for Demi. They actually, I think, had like 3 birthday cakes, if I recall correctly from the documentary. And so I support that. Live your best life. Eat all of the cake. You got to make up for all those years of watermelon cake. And so I think things have been kind of on the upswing for Demi. They even performed, I think, at Joe Biden's inauguration, which is like, it's like super cool. Things have been going super well, and Demi has kind of made the decision to continue with this kind of measured sobriety. Sobriety from the substances that put them in the hospital, but not necessarily like full abstinence. So Demi might drink a little bit and Demi might smoke a little bit. And Demi says that's what's working for them. It's called like California sober, apparently. A lot of people have judged or criticized the decision to be California sober, because there are people who say that moderation doesn't work and you need to be completely abstinent. Otherwise, you might as well just be completely off the wagon. And I think that everybody's recovery can look different. I think that different recovery plans will work for different people, and we should respect other people's journeys. So, just because this works for Demi doesn't mean it'll work for everyone else or for you, if you're watching this. But it seems to work for Demi. All I can really do is take their word for it, right? And I think that's all anyone else can do. And I think, we just got to respect people's decisions, right? So they have actually said that they're not going to be discussing their sobriety in the future after all of the backlash they got for saying they were California sober. And I think that's probably a good decision. So I don't want to talk about it too much. I just kind of wanted to voice my support for letting people do what's right for them and respecting other people's paths, because they aren't going to look like ours. So, the final piece of Demi's journey and story that I want to tell today is over the course of 2020, it seems like being alone and having time to themselves, and also, getting to know some other people who have similar experiences, such as Sam Smith, Demi has explored their sense of gender identity. The story goes, based on what I've gathered from interviews and Demi's podcast, is that Demi had been with Sam Smith in the studio, and Sam was telling Demi about how they are non-binary. And Demi had been asking questions about what that means and how that works for them. And Sam had said basically, come to this poetry reading with me tonight. My friend Alok is also non-binary. They are going to be performing, and their poems speak to the non-binary experience. You might like it. So Demi went with Sam to Alok's performance, and Demi said basically that they felt like someone else was speaking their truth, and they were finally hearing someone else verbalize how they were feeling.
I remember that feeling of coming to your show and hearing my story through your words, having never met you.
And it was really special to them that night. And I think it was that night that kind of helped change the perspective and made them realize that another piece of what wasn't working for them back before they overdosed was not just the lack of control and agency, but the lack of authenticity.
In 2018, when I overdosed, I feel like the reason why that happened was because I was ignoring my truth. And I was suppressing who I really am in order to please stylists or team members or this or that, or even fans that wanted me to be the sexy feminine pop star in a leotard and look a certain way. I thought that was what I was supposed to be. And now I just realize it's so much more important to live your truth than to ever suppress yourself, because that's the type of stuff that happens when you do.
Because they were being this more hyper femme, sexy, pop star. And that's not who they feel like they are on the inside. And so I think, they have said that coming to realize that they are non-binary and they are not a woman. They don't identify with that. They said that that's been a big piece too in this recovery journey, is that if they had not come out as non-binary and had not really decided to accept their true selves, that they would be putting themselves at risk of, ending up back in the hospital again, because not being true to themselves and making their own choices was how they got there. So I think it's really special that they've realized this about themselves. We've seen more celebrities come out and open up about their gender identity in ways that I think are really helpful to the public, because, non-binary people exist. They have for a very long time. And, different societies and cultures have had different acceptance levels for non-binary people. And ours hasn't been great in the past. We have been pretty black and white with the way we treat gender, at least in, the United States, and, all of colonialism. But so I think it's good when somebody who is public realizes they're non-binary and feels comfortable coming out, because I think it just shows other people that, times are changing, and we're trying to move back towards cultural acceptance, which has existed in many cultures over history, just not in our current one necessarily. So all that is to say, I think it's wonderful. I think that when somebody comes out, people accuse them of looking for attention. And I just think there are lots of ways to get attention. So I think, if you want to be a good person and you don't want to dismiss somebody's sincerely held, identity, you should just take their word for it, because who are you to decide who's fake and who's not, right? It's just not worth it. Just believe them. So Demi announced their podcast 4D, and they did their first podcast episode explaining that they are non-binary and coming out. They invited Alok, the person who had the poetry reading, to be on it with them. Alok is a non-binary, educator and activist, so they were able to kind of give like a non-binary 101 little spiel during the podcast. So if you don't know what it means to be non-binary, I really think you should look it up. 4D with Demi Lovato. It is the first podcast. It's the first episode. I think it's the only one that's up right now. It will break it down for you and help you understand what that means. And so I just think it's really wonderful. Demi has had a very difficult journey and a very public struggle with very, very serious and stigmatized issues. And throughout the time, Demi has been open and honest and transparent about their struggles and very willing to be vulnerable with the public. And I think that their openness has been important to fans and, not just fans, but just people who are aware of their story. And I just think it's really special. I think Demi is a very special person. I think they have a special journey. And I look forward to seeing what they do in the future. I listened to their new album yesterday. It was very powerful. So I hope this has been an interesting story. I hope that you will continue with me in trying to move to the they, them pronouns for Demi. They said publicly that it just means a lot when people try, and they don't want people to be so afraid to mess up that they don't try. So I would just encourage you to hear that and know that, like, you might say she, her occasionally on accident, but it's important that you try. And that's what Demi has said, is just please try. So yeah, I hope this has been interesting. I want to make sure I'm telling people's stories with like empathy and, without making assumptions. So I'm really trying to only tell you stuff that Demi has told us before. I'm not, I'm really just, Poe is biting her tail. Poe let me know while I was filming that she really needed me to play with her. So this is where I need to close the video. I hope you have a wonderful day. I make videos every Wednesday, and I'm considering doing a Thursday video as well in the future. Basically, what I'm thinking is, so many people told me that I have like a calming voice and like that my videos were relaxing to them, and someone even said like unintentional ASMR. And I was thinking, like, I don't want to do like ASMR, but what if I did do like intentionally calming videos? So like this is just an idea that I was literally having today while I was setting up to film, so it's like super half-baked. But my thought is that I can I don't know, I can do something like a relaxing like evening routine, like wash my face and like, I don't know, take a bath or something, and I would obviously wear like a swimsuit or whatever. But I could during that time also like do kind of like what some other like commentary channels do, where they give like the highlights and just talk about like their thoughts on like whatever stuff is being talked about on the internet. So maybe I talk about like, I don't know, Gabby Hanna. Everybody seems to like when I talk about Gabby Hanna. Just talk about something while doing like an evening routine or some kind of like relaxing thing and make it be like a do self-care with me thing, like we're hanging out and I'm taking a bath and telling you about something interesting that ideally requires less research than these videos that I do on Wednesdays. And then ideally, the idea would be the viewer would also do something that relaxes them, and we could just like relax together and it'd be good. So yeah, I'm thinking about doing that. If I do, you'll know pretty shortly. It'll be up tomorrow if I do that. I just figure, I don't know, I finally got the algorithm to notice me, and I feel like I should use that momentum while I can. So I hope you have not minded me not paying as much attention during my outro because I'm playing with Bo. But she was biting her tail and like growling at it and chasing her tail. And it was kind of upsetting, and I was worried about her. And she tends to do that when she like needs to play. So, and it's weird. Like I literally played with her for 30 minutes earlier today because I knew that I would need to ignore her while I filmed. But you know, you do what you gotta do for your pets because they are sweet little babies. Oh, you want to say bye? I don't know if she's visible on the camera or not. She is behind me. I've not just been like swinging this around for like fun. There is a cat playing. I hope you can see her. But yeah, okay, so that's it for the video. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and the bell icon too. Yeah, bye.